Today we're breaking down what's really going on with the development formerly known as Epic City, which has been renamed the Meadow. This project started as a Muslim-centric community right here in Collin and Hunt County. And because of that branding, there's been a lot of discussion. It's become one of the most controversial developments in the state of Texas.
Islam is America's last hope.
What happens when Muslims take over an American city?
Everywhere where these radical Islamists have touched, what you get is chaos. You get violence. You get the subjugation of women.
So you don't think there's any issue in getting a 7-year-old to wear that kind of dress?
I don't think it's really a bad thing.
We've gotten a lot of national protest groups as well, including the one that was in Dearborn, Michigan last month, a couple weeks ago.
First of all, let me commend you for going into the fire and taking some shrapnel. They don't like it when you speak ill will of their prophet, of their beliefs, of their ridiculous Sharia law rules. And it seems like they're trying a new, and you tell me if I'm wrong, Trojan horse approach at taking over America. Instead of hitting us again with bombs, planes, attacks, beheadings, like we are familiar with 25 years ago, they're now acting like they want to be part of our society. But do they?
No, we are seeing a insidious movement. The Muslims are outbreeding white Americans, Christian Americans, everybody, because they have polygamy. They have 4 or 5 wives, and they are taking control of Minneapolis, Dearborn, New York City. The bastions of freedom, New York and London for Western civilization have been conquered by radical jihadis. So no, Dan, they do not want to live like us. They're incompatible with us. And I told them, and just like I said at City Hall, get the F out of here. This is our country, and we don't want your insurgency, your Sharia law, your oppression of women, of homosexuals, of all the different groups that they hate. White people and kafirs, they call us, animals. We don't want your hatred. We don't want your oppression. We don't want your tyranny. Kindly find the door and get the F out of here, Dan.
Yeah, I got to say, I mean, if you look at the America First MAGA movement that President Trump helped to build 10 years ago in 15, it's all encompassing, right? And I even know some folks on the right that aren't always comfortable with the people that President Trump brought into the camp. To them, I say, and shut up and sit down, adults are speaking. He brought in people from every walk of life, every race, color, creed, every religion, every sexual preference and orientation. And it's not about being, to me anyway, this isn't about being racist or hatred or thinking Christianity is a better faith, which I do, by the way. It is pointing out simple facts, okay? That the Muslim Islamic faith and their Sharia law and their way of life cannot coexist with the way capitalistic America runs. It just doesn't jive. And that's why I think they've taken this new approach to get involved in our politics. How many of those city council members, I know the police chief is, the mayor is, and 1 or 2 of the council members, all Muslims, and they've filled up Dearborn's rosters with Muslims as well, right?
Almost all of them were Muslim in there. And you have to understand, it's not a religion. This is really a political subversive movement to dominate the world.
Agreed.
They come with an ideology that has nothing to do with the religious faith. It has everything to do with becoming the most dominant race, religion, and people in the world through these lying methods that even their prophet said, you can lie to a kafir, you can lie to a non-Muslim and trick them. And so do not fall for it, Americans. These people do not want to assimilate. They don't have the same values. They don't have the same culture, the same language, the same God. They have nothing in common with you. All they want to do is outbreed you and take over.
And looking at this here, they're gearing up to travel. So we're going to talk about that a little bit today as well, because this is a nationwide flashpoint. The development was originally proposed by the East Plano Islamic Center, which is Epic multiple sources you can go find anywhere on YouTube or the internet, Dallas News, TPR. It was proposed and marketed as a Muslim-centric, Muslim-friendly neighborhood with more than 1,000 homes, an Islamic school, a mosque, parks, clinics, senior housing, retail, even community college. And that's not speculation. That's all from their marketing material. The original, as stated, was Epic City. The developers rebranded it the Meadow, and according to some, they say it was a strategic move to try to maybe, put a little bit of the shade off of them. It's located in Collin and Hunt County in the unincorporated areas, not in Josephine, as their original media and their content was stating. Everything was branded the city of Josephine. And this is critical for people to understand because, they're in the unincorporated. They don't have to abide by a city or get anything from the city. They just go through TCEQ, get their approvals like the mud, and move forward. With all the controversy, they've had multiple state investigations that were launched against them from Governor Abbott and the Attorney General's office, which was basically consumer protection, housing laws, and those things.
The Department of Justice has ended a civil rights investigation into a Collin County development that has drawn intense social media backlash, but other state investigations continue. Nick Wooten with the Dallas Morning News first broke this story about Epic City and joins us now with more. Nick, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So, Nick, what happened earlier this week?
So the big news from this week is the Department of Justice ended its civil rights investigation into Epic City. No charges or lawsuits were brought. The developers, community capital partners, agreed to revise and develop marketing materials to show that the development is open to all, regardless of religion.
And what prompted this particular investigation in the first place?
We're not 100% sure, but we do know that Senator John Cornyn reached out to the DOJ over concerns that the developers of Epic City could discriminate against Christian and Jewish Texans. Cornyn also said that community capital partners could be violating the Fair Housing Act.
So you mentioned other investigations. Where are things with those, and when could development actually begin for Epic City?
A few months ago, Governor Abbott said that at least a dozen state agencies were looking into community capital partners and the East Plano Islamic Center. Members of the mosque formed the development group. We've heard little regarding the investigations. Abbott signed a new bill into law last week that aims to address some of the concerns that these agencies mentioned. No plans for the project have been submitted yet, but developers say they could begin the permitting process for Epic City in July or August. And obviously that project will take years to build.
All right, we'll keep an eye on that. Nick Wooten with the Dallas Morning News. Thanks for staying on top of that story.
Thank you all for having me.
Now you can read more on this story and Nick's work right now on dallasnews.com.
So far, there's been no plats and no finished designs. Still a flat piece of dirt and no community. It's just a field. Because of the early marketing described in the Muslim-centric development, it triggered a lot of concerns. Some legitimate, some, you can say not or whatever. It's opinion based, but it definitely has gotten a lot of attention. A lot of the worry is the culture change and the assimilation and all that. So, but the developer didn't do themselves no favors because from day one they labeled it that way. They've changed some of their strategic planning, the way they're doing it, but they labeled it that way. So now let's talk a little bit about the protest. There was a protest in Dearborn, Michigan, which was led by Jake Lang, who's a national activist, who, you can search him up on the internet. He was a January 6th. He went to jail. I believe he's running for state Congress or something in Florida. But that protest got pretty vile. It got physical, and it was pretty out of control. So the big thing is they're posting on social media about coming to Josephine and protesting at Epic. Well, there's no Epic in Josephine, so there is an Epic in Plano. So I've seen that they've changed their paths to now, instead of saying and labeling Josephine, now they're saying Plano. So they're going to be more fit to go there. They're not going to get any reaction in Josephine because there's nothing there. There's going to be nothing there for controversy. There's not going to be anyone to give them resistance. So they're posting on TikTok and all over, for their crusade protest to start the 13th in December, and then they've got other places that you can find. So it's pretty big national news, and with all the everything that's going around nationally, this is a very hot topic, the Islamification of, as they say, of America. And regardless of which way you feel, if there is a Islamification, happening in America. I mean, Europe's, it's pretty bad over there. Just the immigration problems. Immigration's the biggest problem. Illegal immigration. Be real clear. There's a difference between illegal immigration and legal immigration. There's a big difference.
Now, to see just how bad the migrant crisis has gotten and to understand how locations like the Eiffel Tower have been conquered by illegal migrants, I met up with French journalists to understand and to see the migrant crisis firsthand.
What can you guys tell me about the immigration here inside of France?
France became crazy. We have over 10 million immigrants from out of Europe who came in France over the last 30 years. So it's for a population of 70 million people. So you can imagine how it changed. It changes the face of France. And plus, they are also a lot concentrated in some point. In Paris, of course, we have districts who are fully great replaced, where you will not see any native French. So there is a population change, and it's not going better because every year in France we receive 500,000 immigrants every year.
But you can think whichever way you want on that, whether you believe it or not. But I feel like there's going to be a big push against, some of what's going on. If you watch the deal in Dearborn, I definitely wouldn't want the their call to prayer in my back door. I don't want that. I don't want any kind of noise of late like that or any time of the day. I think it's just insane that they have it happening in America, that they're playing the call of prayer over loudspeakers. I think it's crazy. That's what I think most people are fearful locally on this topic, is them coming in and, they say, well, we're just, we're not going to do anything but just, have our great, lovely community. And over time, they slowly infiltrate, local offices or whatever, and they change policies, they change rules or whatever, and then they start, having their call to prayer, similar to Dearborn, in the streets. They got Islamic names on the street signs. I mean, it's just, it's not American culture. And there's nothing wrong with having mixed cultures. You know, you got, you know, your little Italy, or, you know, your Christian heavy areas, but when you start doing things that impede on others is when it becomes a problem. You know, and a call to prayer over sound, you know, loudspeakers in the city, I think that is impeding on everybody else. You know, we don't put our signs in any other language but English. It's English. We are America. That's our language. So overall, I think the bigger picture that I'm getting to on this subject here is not only the, you know, the Islam community, but we have another issue of legislation. You know, as far as state, you know, legislation, they not only this development but others creating these muds, because that's what that development is. It's a mud where they can put their streets and all their infrastructure in. They don't have to rely on anybody else to do it. They can do their own through the mud. You know, they file for bonds and all those things, and taxpayers end up paying that, the ones who move in there, and similar to other just housing developments that your builders build that are muds. There's a reason they put them on the edges of cities like Josephine, because it makes it seem like they're developing in that city, so the people that are buying into it or whatever are there, but they're not truly citizens of that city. It's in unincorporated, so they pay those mud fees, and they have to pay all those fees. Well, these developers have really learned the system very well, and they're definitely taking advantage of it, and they're using it to their advantage and not to you know, the local residents around or the county people or whatever. It's become a burden because they're the ones making all the profit and then running. So I think that hopefully this will bring a lot to, you know, legislation that, hey, something needs to be done. It's very obvious. Everybody can see that it can be done. And what they always say, you know, everything that you read and see, you know, that they will use our freedoms against us. Well, here you go. All these people don't want this development, but by the books, if they do everything by the book, well, legislators have created that book. For whatever reason, they've made some of these laws that make it just so easy for these developers. Well, now they got something here that they don't want, and they're trying to find everything they can to get rid of it or to not let it happen. You know, like, you know, just the grandstanding of no Shahir law in the state of Texas, and that's you're just writing something on top of something that's already there. Like, Abbott ain't doing nothing that ain't already on the books. You know, this is already here. So a lot of this is just political grandstand. You know, they're just making a show, and showings don't do nothing. You have to make changes in legislation that will address these issues, not only with developments like this, but all mud developments that are burdening, you know, the small cities around them. So, but as far as what, you know, say for the cities can do to a mud that is neighboring to them, there is no control. You know, if you don't have a CCM, you know, the water district or none of that, you don't hold that over them to where you're telling them you're going to do this or you're not, we're not going to serve you. That would be the only control that you have. The county has all the control when it's in the county's jurisdiction as far as, you know, put to them. But as long as they're doing everything that the county has on the books as far as development, then they can't just say no. They have to make sure they meet all the criteria of, you know, police, fire, whatever, you know, streets and developments, everything that they have. Because TCEQ, the one who approves these, they just stamp them and push them on through. Doesn't care. This may be a different, but you can't play politics on some of them. So this is just the beginning. This is going to be a very, very drawn out, very hot topic that I believe is going to push for some changes to the mud laws, which is good because it needs to happen. And then on the other note of the protesters and stuff, I feel like there's going to be a pretty big protest marching on December 13th on not only for this area or Texas with the Islamification as they're saying, or the courts that they're talking about in Fort Worth, the Shahira courts. That's another subject. But if you want the truth in plain English, hit that subscribe button and stick around because this one's just getting started.